go ahead and make you up.
I don't walk away with this time.
Do you want me to leave it ringing then?
Remind me, because I went home with it last
You
time.
got it. No worries. I trust you. We have another one just in case. All right, everybody. Have a good class today. You guys got a good one. Miss Joy Murphy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming here. Well, anyways, my name is Joy Murphy, and I'm going to be your instructor today for teaching the Chapter 17 of Ignite, Make and Receive Offers. Just to kind of give you guys, in case you don't know who I am, if you've never met me, I want to give you a little bit of background about myself so you kind of get to know me a little bit more. So I'm a full-time realtor. I've been in the business since I got my license in December of 1998. It'll be almost 27 years this end of this year that I'll be celebrating my anniversary. Thank you. So when I first started this industry, I always knew that I wanted to be a business owner. And, I got out of the day job thing. I worked 2 different jobs. I was working at Mervyn's at the time, if y'all remember Mervyn's. And then I also worked at Schooners as a bartender and waitress. So I was doing that cocktail and retail, and I wanted to get into real estate. I had a lot of friends, customers that was coming into Schooners that was always in real estate, like lenders, officers, loan officers, and a lot of top producers that I saw. Back in the day, the top producers were like Debbie Carrico, Linda Patterson, J.C. Boucher. You probably see some of their names. They're still around, a lot of them, but I always just aspired to be just like them because they always talked about real estate, and that got me into this business. My I knew that I wanted to do this full-time right away. Being in the business industry, being a people person, when you're in the service industry, I thought to myself, you know what, I want to make more money. I was motivated by money. And I was motivated to not want to have to punch in and clock in and report to somebody and have a schedule that I had to go to work. I wanted to be in control of my own destiny and making my own money, and that's what I chose to do. So I made a plan of my exit strategy to get out of my regular job and into full-time real estate. And one of the plans was to make sure that I saved money, paid off all of my debt, because I was literally going to just quit and had all the faith and driven purpose to do this full-time, which I succeeded to do. And the first year that I did it part-time, I closed 3 transactions, but the first time that I was full-time position, I closed 12 transactions my very first year as a full-time real estate agent. And ever since then, I've always closed more than 12, so my average is anywhere between 20 and 30 transactions all the time, so the consistency is there. And all I have to say is that I've been through several different markets. I started off in the HUD market, then we went to a stable market, then we went to the booming market of the 2004, 5, 6, then we went into the crash market, then we went into the foreclosure, and then the short sale market, then we're back to coming out of that recovery since 2012, we're kind of going through a little different kind of a market. So I've seen many, many markets, and I can kind of sense the changes that are going to happen. So I'm here today to kind of help guide you through all of that. The market is different. I want to help you guys put together the best offers that we possibly can. And also, when you're on the other side of things, when you're the listing agent, what are we going to be looking for to get to the yes and to the close? Okay?
Okay.
Oh.
I just wanted to make sure everybody you were good.
Okay. All right. So we got our notices, fair housing, copyright infringements. Okay, so our course overview. We're basically, let me get it over here. Offers. Make sure you guys pass along those things. Okay, so our belief systems. Why don't we all go over our Y4C2Ts together out loud? Can you see it? Can you see it? Yeah, there you are. Okay, let's all talk about our Y4C2Ts and say it out loud together. We have win-win, integrity, do the right thing, customers, always come first, commitment in all things, communication, Seek first to understand, creativity, ideas before results, teamwork, together everyone achieves more, trust starts with honesty, equity, opportunities for all, and success results through people. Okay. So the last class we spoke about working with buyers and sellers from the agreement through getting an offer. Today we are going to be covering the offer process. We are going to cover the steps to submit an offer as a buyer's agent and reviewing the offer as a listing agent. Before we begin, let's hear about the progress with the daily success system from yesterday. Does anybody have anything to share about yesterday?
One of the things that we discussed quite a bit was making sure that we communicate with clients, that we know what it is, their motivations and their goals, and always keeping them up to date as to what's going on. And then work on the presentations, advice, presentation, consultation, things like that.
Right. So obviously, before you sit down and present your offer, you should have already had your consultation. You should have already had signed your buyer-broker agreement before we actually submit your offer. You've already built your rapport. You've already kind of like shared about the process of buying, and that's all part of your presentation and whatnot. And so now we're getting ready to put it down in writing and try to make that money. Okay? Let's see here. So my stuff is not the same as the screen. Okay, on the screen it says, I like to think of sales as the ability to gracefully persuade, not manipulate, a person or persons into a win-win situation. So that's by Bo Bennett, author and PhD. Basically, we have to step into the shoes of being their guiding light, helping them, put the right foot forward and trying to present and put the best offer together. And that's the same thing as trying to have the best, try to pick and choose the right offer for the sellers. We give them our advice. We let them have their options and let them make the decisions of what's going to be best for them. We can't try so much to be emotionally involved with them because there's going to be a lot of emotions. We're going to have buyers that are very nervous. They're going to be maybe not sure if this is the right thing, double guessing themselves. They're going to go through emotional roller coasters. And it's up to us to kind of like make them feel comfortable and at ease by letting them know, here's the plan, this is what we can do, here are some options, because you're going to do a lot of the footwork first to kind of like give them, their options of what to choose from. What I mean by it is, like before you sit down and write an offer, you're going to do a lot of the footwork of like finding out a little bit more about the property, how many days it's been on the market. I always run comps on every home that the buyer decides to write an offer on. I want to make sure that the listing price is where it needs to be. That's one of the most important things that you need to do. Don't just write the offer based on what the listing agent and the seller has put the house on the market. Sometimes you've got sellers that overprice their houses. Sometimes you've got sellers that underprice their houses for a reason. They want to offload the property as quickly as possible. You've got to have communication with that listing agent, finding out if there's any offers on the table. See if you're competing with anything. Ask questions so that way when you sit down with your clients, you're able to answer the questions and help guide them with the options that you are professionally guiding them to do, okay? So that's what you're trying to do, is asking lots of questions with the listing agent, and then you're going to present that to your buyers, so that way you can help answer the questions that they may have as you sit down to help guide them to put together that right offer. Okay, so our offer process is going to be preparing the offer, writing the offer, presenting the offer, receiving the response, and then we're going to go over the recaps and the ahas at the end. Okay. By the end of the session, you will know how to communicate with your buyers, sellers, and the other agent during the offer process. You're going to understand best practices for making and receiving offers in your market. To start thinking about what will you learn today, let's consider what questions we might have and what we'd like to learn about. find a partner and take 5 minutes about questions that you think you'd like to learn more about today. Jot down your notes in your participation, and then we'll go over those questions to kind of like help. So take about 5 minutes, pair up either groups of 2 or 3, and think of 2 questions that you think you would like to ask that we could talk about. Today's agenda, so. Okay,
What you think? Oh, this house, I got some up here.
He had a question.
Mm-hmm.
About this property?
Oh, no. That's going to be an example of what we're going to talk about through this class. This is just the stuff that we're going to go over when we actually start. But what I want you to do right now is think about some kind of questions that you think would be important to ask, come up with something.
As a realtor for your client?
For whatever you feel, even if it's something that you feel like, you would like me to answer and help give you some guidance on. Okay? Questions that you would like to learn more about, in the buying process or when you're representing sellers. So think of something that you feel you might be struggling with, or maybe you're not sure how to go through. Maybe you're currently going through a situation right now to kind of like, so we can kind of like go over some examples, and I can help guide you guys with some things that, you might be having some issues with or challenges. Yeah. Could be anything.
Brandon, what would be the questions that we would want to
Oh, yeah.
the buyer in order to help them get an offer accepted? And like you said, we need also to questions to what the answers are. What do you think you should ask?
Would they be willing to like, say they offer 10,000 below asking, right? Would they be willing to like, is that their like highest, or would they be willing to let the house go?
That's one of those, yeah. Yeah, if we don't get this house, is that okay with you?
We're asking our clients that.
You're okay.
Or it's not, or you can ask everyone if you want to make an offer. What questions do you have in general? So like you can come to like ask your buyer, okay, like what is making you come to the offer?
I'm more of a no. Are you willing to walk away from this property if the seller, if we come in at a lower bid, are you willing to walk away? How serious are you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or, like say the house is first, like,
What is your highest offer? Are you willing to go up at, like, say they said they're gonna go up and say, we're coming in at 400, all I wanna get is 4. So, how serious are you that you might lose this house? Because there are other people.
You guys ready to talk about what questions you might have from each one of your groups? Yeah? Okay. You almost done over there in the corner with your question? Yeah? Okay. I'm going to start with this one, and then we'll go back to you guys. Okay, so what is your challenge or your question that you'd like to share?
When there's a house listed, and it's the asking price, say like it was $450, and your client likes the house after they see it and everything, but they want to come in. I guess it's a low offer for $400. And then I guess you would ask them, is that your highest offer? How serious are you about this house? Are you willing to walk away from it?
Right.
Because there's other bids that's going to come in.
Right.
What is your highest offer? And
So-
would you, and if the seller doesn't want it, are you willing to walk away from that
Right,
without being
right.
in remorse or whatever?
So as part of your research, obviously you contact the listing agent, you find out if you've got other competing offers, you find out that they do. And in your conversation, I would probably ask them, are any of the, would you be able to share if any of the offers are all cash? I'd like to ask that question, see if you're competing with an all-cash offer. Do you have multiple offers that are over the list price? You know, sometimes they'll engage in having that conversation. They're not going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, but don't be afraid to ask those questions because you're trying to dig and find out more information from that listing agent. Is there a deadline on that offer, on your offers? You know, dead set deadline? Is it highest and best? Did you already submit a highest and best counter offer, or are you just now just collecting offers and presenting them? So that way you can kind of like go back to the buyer and say, okay, I know you want to offer $400,000, but let me show you something. When I ran comps, this is what the comps are showing. They're over the offer that you would like to submit. And I also had a conversation with the listing agent that we have multiple offers. And we also just so happened to share with me that one is an all-cash buyer and two are over the listing price. Now, are you sure you still want to position yourself at $400,000 because you're not even going to stand a fighting chance to get your offer based on the evidence here that this house is worth more than what you would like to offer and based on the conversation that I've had with the listing agent? So that's when you want to try to show them the logic because they're coming from a whole different place. They're coming in, I want my payment, this is what I feel that the house is worth. Sometimes you can't convince a buyer, you know, to come to reality. And sometimes it's going to take one, maybe two lessons of them missing the boat, meaning they're not going to get their offer accepted. Sometimes they have to go through the process of losing for them to come back to earth. And maybe by that second round or that third round, they will not make that next mistake again. So sometimes you have to go through it. I mean, no matter how much you try to convince them about the market, what the other agent is sharing, you're going to have to go through the process because at the end of the day, you still have to put that offer together based on what they want to put the offer together at because that's your job still. But it's also your job to show them that, you know, this is where we're at and, you know, by doing this, you have to be fully prepared that you're not going to get this home. And maybe they're not ready. Maybe they still feel like they're very convicted to offer that lowball offer, and that's okay. You know, because sometimes, like I said, probably about 25-30% of the buyers out there will have to get their feelings hurt once or twice before they finally come back around and listen to your advice that you're going to advise them with. You know, so what's your guys' question and challenge?
About the buyers paying us the commission. For me, that's something was the business before, and now it's, they have to pay. So how can we? Because usually buyers are so used to sellers is going to pay you, but now it's different.
Right.
Sometimes they have to, pay. Or most of the time.
Right.
So how do you present that to them?
So the question, if in case for all those that are on Zoom, the question is like dealing with the compensation, how sometimes, you know, how things are done differently now than they were before. It's all going to depend on your presentation. When you have your first buyer broker presentation, I like to have a presentation with them, whether it's by phone, by email, by person-to-person contact when you're going over the buyer-broker agreement. I give them a lot of information as to what are the changes. I actually give them copies of the NAR changes for both buyers and sellers. I sit down and tell them what are the differences and what are the changes, and then I'll let them know that what are their options too, because not every seller is going to be willing to pay the compensation for me. So you let them know, you know, what are the changes, and then if they fall in love with the home, and that seller is not willing to pay any compensation at all, are they going to be willing to pay that compensation? Because if not, and it's not financially feasible, then maybe that's not the right house for them. Because not every buyer is going to be willing to pay that compensation, and not every seller is going to be willing to pay that compensation. It's very minimal. Most of the sellers are still paying compensation. I have not had anybody say, I'm not paying you compensation. I have been asked to be paid less than what I asked for. I always ask for 3% on my buyer broker agreement, and I really try to see if I can get that. But I will also be willing to modify my compensation and not really hold that buyer accountable, especially if I know that that buyer doesn't have enough money, because a lot of buyers, you got your VA buyers that hardly have any money at all, and then you've got first-time home buyers that are scraping, and they need all the money that they can for their down payment and closing costs if they're not going to get enough concessions. So I will do an MTBR, which is a modification of to the BRC, which is your buyer broker compensation. I will drop from 3 to 2.5% if the seller countered me 2.5%. I'm not going to hold that buyer accountable to pay the difference. I'm not one of those kind of agents that is greedy. I'm all about that 3%. If I know that my client has a financial situation where I know they're not going to be able to pay that difference, and they have just enough money to make that deal happen, I'm not going to take that away from them in that opportunity. I will drop my commission to 2.5%. So those are the choices that you have. Everyone is different. So I would explain to your buyer that, my job here is I'm going to try to find you the best house, the best deal, negotiate the terms and everything, including my compensation. We're going to try to get that all put together. And if, and if they say, well, what happens if they're not going to pay your compensation? I go, here are your choices. If you really want it, you will have to pay my compensation. And then you can renegotiate your compensation at that time. Or if you get a counter, that they're only going to pay X amount of dollars, 2.5%, 2.25%, 2% or whatever, then you have to be willing as the agent to take, make that decision. Are you going to get your buyer to pay the difference, or are you going to do the modification of terms to your BRC? Did that answer your question? Yeah? Okay. You had your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm sure that also goes a long way with your buyers. If you're like, well, I'm not gonna, if you're, you can't afford it, I'm not gonna try to take it from you. I'm sure, like, they have seen that, and they might refer you business later on because, like, she's not about the money, she's about
Right.
you finding a home.
Right. There's always to be agents that are going to be about the money and they don't care. And then there's going to be the agents that will, do what is right and try to help your clients. If you're in that position of helping your clients and giving 200% is what I say, more than the average or whatever it is, it's going to come back as a referral. They're going to refer you to friends and family saying, hey, this agent of mine really took great care of me, when it came down to this. And they share their stories. They do share their stories to their coworkers and their families. So yes, in return, when you make that kind of sacrifice, saying I'm not going to make my full commission, but that's okay, and I'm okay with that, then you still give them that 200% and bank that they're going to give you referrals down the road. And that's basically where I'm at. Most of my business, 95% of my business is past client referrals. They're repeat past clients and referrals. So they come back, and then they refer me to all their families, friends, and neighbors. So that's the point of my life where I'm not having to buy leads or anything else. It just falls on my lap on a weekly basis. I get phone calls where I have clients that are looking to buy or sell, and that's what you need to do is build your rapport, and they'll reward you back through your kindness. So, does anybody else have any questions about this part? No?
I wanted to know, I just got licensed last month.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I wanted to know how you obtain reliable market information. Besides comparables that you might find in the MLS, how you find, you've been in it for a long time, so you probably have some.
What do I do? What do I do to stay on top of things?
Yeah. How can I get,
other sources? Okay. Yeah. Besides your multiple listing service, I subscribe to Keeping Current Matters, KCM. What it does is it's a platform where you have different types of marketing that helps you go over what's happening in the nation overall. Not just your hyper-local through the MLS. So kind of like what's going on with the whole nation, which is important because that's kind of like the general of things, the average things. It gives me information. It gives me like I could do like you can get you could do reports. Like there's buyer guides, seller guides. You get them quarterly through the seasons. You can do script videos, and it talks about the market. If you follow me on Facebook, you could probably see some of my video content that I do. I have actually regular content that I do for my feeds and my stories. It all comes from keeping current matters. So that kind of like talks about the whole general market of real estate. So I do that, and I also do a lot of podcasts. So like every single day, obviously, you could listen to some of the stuff with Keller Williams, and then I also listen to another one, let me see, which is very informative in my opinion. I look forward to it. Let me see what my subscriptions are here. It's BAM. It's called BAM, B-A-M. Looks like this right here. Price Square Shrinking. So they come on, they have like Topic Tuesdays, the hot shoot, they talk about the hot shoot right there, if you subscribe on YouTube to BAM. They come on every morning, I think at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, but you can, BAM.
Oh,
On YouTube, yes.
On YouTube.
I listen to this every day, religiously.
okay.
And,
That's an app?
that's an app. You just subscribe and go to YouTube and BAM, yeah. And I listen to, they have a hot sheet, they talk about different things. They always talk about like what's happening with Powell and the Feds and with the rates and how it could possibly affect the market. And they talk about the whole market across the nation too, like West Coast, South Coast, East Coast. So you kind of like have a generalization of like what's happening around other states, but at the same time, you know, like what is happening on the West Coast. They go over everything. So that's okay. So I'm constantly educating myself and feeding myself with information like this so that way I'm on top of things. I have to say, the more you educate yourself and you get involved in doing things like this on a daily basis, learning your market locally as well as nationally, you're going to find that you're going to build yourself your confidence. When you're having those conversations with your clients, it becomes a lot easier to convince them to kind of like follow your lead. You know, you always have to give them the choices, but when they hear you and you're having these conversations, they're going to think like, oh my gosh, this person is just full of valuable information, and they're going to trust you so much more easier, and then they're going to take your advice a lot easier rather than trying to do it their way. So you will have those that will be dead set on doing the lowball offers, you know, or whatnot. But this kind of educating yourself will help you get through that process of having to build the trust, and then they'll trust in you, and kind of like take your guidance and follow your lead. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, the offer process. So, this process is also in your participant guide. So, what emotions do buyers and sellers have at the stage in the process? What are all the emotions that you're experiencing with your buyers right now? From the time that you're sitting down with their consultation, or the time that you're actually showing houses, or you know, when you're sitting down at the table to start preparing an offer. What are you guys experiencing right now?
Concerns about the interest rate, maybe a little fear, uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of that happening. There's a lot of that's been happening for quite some time now. It hasn't helped with the interest rates that have been in the, you know, sixes and sevens, between 6 and 7, pretty much for the whole entire year. We haven't really gotten a break. So, yes, when emotions run hot for others, it is our job to remain professional, though, and put together. In our purchase of our sale, we do not need to get emotional. We serve them as being calm, reassuring, in control, and most importantly, by communicating everything to our clients in a timely manner. So, you have to explain the importance of communicating with your clients in a timely manner. What are the rules of how quickly you must provide with them with the contracts and other documents? So, like when you write an offer, and like when your offer is accepted, do you know what the timely manner is to get that back to them? It's 24 hours. So you got to get them ratified copies within 24 hours. It goes with the listing also as well. So just to let you know, a lot of people forget to send them their copies, because like when you send everything by DocuSign, they don't necessarily get a copy of it. So you got to make sure that they get a copy of it, you know. And so that's just one of the things that you have to do. And then don't forget to put all of your opportunities into command, by the way. So I always make sure that your buyer lead is in command automatically, and then you can start doing all of that. So buyer makes the offer, the seller responds in one of the ways. They're going to respond in a counter offer. They might respond in a accepting the offer. They might respond in just rejecting the offer. Now, when you get a rejected offer, I would go above and actually request that you receive a copy of the rejection of the offer, especially in a situation when it's a multiple offer situation. Because how do you even know if they actually presented the offer? You know? So just say, okay, thanks for letting me know. If you could please kindly provide me a copy of the rejection signed by your clients, I would greatly appreciate it. So that way now, you can also give a copy of that rejection to your client, because they're also going to wonder how are they going to take your word for it that their offer was rejected, you know?
Is there a rejection form?
So on the actual purchase agreement, on I believe the signature page, there is a bottom portion of the RPA that will show you where your client is going to, not your client, but the seller is going to sign a rejection page, when the offer was presented and when it was rejected. So that the listing agent should be able to provide that to you. That page or the whole contract back, signed or rejected.
What do you do if you don't get a copy of it, or, I mean, you don't get any answer back with a copy of it? Do you call the listing agent? Or?
Yes, you definitely want to call the listing agent. So you're going to run into some situations where there's going to be agents that are just terrible at communicating or don't care. Sometimes I feel like I don't even know why they're in this business, you know? But do everything that you possibly can by phone call, by email, and text messages multiple times. You know, like maybe do the phone call, text, and email, and then do another phone call. And if you're not receiving any kind of phone call or response within, because they have 3 days to respond unless you put an actual expiration date on your offer submission. Because by the contract, it automatically is 3 days for them to respond. If you want to shorten that time frame, you can, especially if you know that there is maybe the listing agent mentioned that you know, they're going to be back. They're not going to review offers for a whole week or whatever it is, because we're going to have our first open house. You can just keep that 3-day expiration in there if you want to, or even shorten that if you want to, or if you know that there is other offers coming in. If they said, I have 2 offers coming in, but it's not in my email yet, then maybe you might want to shorten it to like 24 hours or 72 hours, because you don't want them to sit on and to collect and then wait. Maybe you'll put them on the position for your client that maybe they'll look at this offer and maybe it'll be too good to refuse it. They'll just take the offer before the other ones even come in. So you can do all of that by asking the questions as you are getting prepared to write your offer. But
a lot of fire under them.
yeah. Sometimes that little bit of pressure will get the seller, you know what, why do I have to wait? This is a great offer, you know. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But when you get an agent that doesn't respond, go through the whole process of trying the multiple different ways of reaching out to them. And then if you still don't have a response, contact the office manager. Don't be afraid to contact that office manager or the office broker about your submission of the offer and you're not hearing back from the agent. Maybe something happened to the agent that nobody is aware of, because that sometimes does happen, medical emergency or something happened. But don't be afraid to contact the office manager or broker, you know, to find out the status of your offer that has been submitted and whatnot. Okay. Buyer, when you get a counter offer, sometimes you're going to go through negotiation processes. You're going to go back and forth many times, sometimes just a couple of times. And that's all part of the negotiations. And sometimes you might be in a position where you're going to get a multiple counter offer, meaning that the seller has multiple offers on the table and that seller is choosing to give a counter offer to multiple buyers at the same time. Not every counter offer may be the same for each buyer. Some of them might be the same, or some of them might have a few things that are the same but different terms, because not every offer is going to be the same. Some are going to be cash, some are going to be below price, some of them are going to be asking for concessions and closing costs, and you know, all sorts of stuff. So they might also even counter you to get cross-qualified. So those are the things that you have to prepare for. And what I mean by cross-qualified, and because I personally do that as a listing agent to the buyer's agents that are giving me offers, on all of my counters, I always say, prior to opening any escrow, buyer's lender to contact seller's lender, which is my lender, this phone number, to complete cross-qualification within 3 business days. And I put the date and I put an expiration date. That's my first term. And then I might counter price, I might counter concessions, I might counter compensation or whatever it is. But I always verify every buyer coming in before I actually go into contracts. I don't just want to believe, especially out-of-area lenders. A lot of times they'll just send a pre-approval letter, but they actually have not officially collected all of the financials to actually look at them. They just ran credit and did a phone conversation, and that's it. They actually never verified income or assets, meaning tax returns, bank statements, paycheck stubs. I always make sure that when I have a buyer going out, that they actually have turned all those financials into my lender's hands, because if I get a counter offer saying I must complete a cross-qualification, well, guess what? Your buyer's ready, and your buyer's information is with their lender, and that lender can share it with that lender immediately without having to play any games of chasing documents. Because if your buyer does not have their bank statements, tax returns, paycheck stubs, and a credit pulled, with the whole credit and everything, that might be that one opportunity that you're losing, because it might take days for your client to get that to the lender. So if your client is ready, willing, and able, I find that a ready, willing, able buyer, because in today's world, about 35% of the listing agents are going to cross-qualify your buyers. They're going to personally contact your agent or your lender, and they're going to say, do you have DO approval? Can you send me DO approval? Meaning, the your buyer's lender already ran DU, which is desktop underwriting. And the only way that they can do that is if they actually have tax returns and paycheck stubs to verify their income calculations, because the DU approval will show their credit score, the mid-FICO scores. It'll show all of their bills. It'll show their debt-to-income ratios. And it will also help them give that calculation, if they actually approve for that sales price. So these are all of the other little things behind the scenes that you do need to know, because if you are in a competing market in a multiple offer situation, you need to make sure that your buyer is ready to go in case you get a cross-qualification, in case you get a listing agent that wants to verify and get a copy of a DU approval, because your lender cannot provide that if they never even got all the financials in the first place. So to me, it is very important when you are working with your buyers that they immediately get all those financials over to their lender to do a complete cross-qualification or complete a pre-approval. And sometimes the lender will do a DU approval, and they'll give you a copy of the DU. And don't be afraid to ask your lender to get a DU, besides your pre-approval letter. Say, can I get a DU approval too, so that I have it in my hand, just in case I find a listing and we write an offer and that listing agent is asking for DU approval. Now, here in that first form that I sent over, if you notice under the agent remarks that I highlighted over here, I'm always giving instructions to the agents, the buyer's agents, of what I expect when I have an offer submitted. So I always want not just the approval letter, I want proof of funds, that they have enough money for their down payment and closing costs. I want DU approval if possible. Because that will give me automatically, when they send me that offer, I will see their mid-FICO score, if they're marginal or not. I will see if they've got a lot of bills. I can see it through their debt-to-income ratios, if they're, barely making it. Because what if the multiple offer situation is submit your highest and best offer also? What if I have room to go up in my price, but maybe that buyer doesn't have room to go up in the price? I'm going to know right away on that DU approval if they have enough room to stretch themselves on that sales price. So this is going to help me eliminate who are the weak buyers automatically by going through all the multiple offer situations when I'm receiving offers. Now we're on the flip side of things. So when you're on the buyer side, you need to make sure that you have all of that information. To me, that is being a very strong buyer's agent, because you've got all your ducks in a row. Most of these agents don't even know what all their ducks in a row is and all the stuff that you need to have. And to me, it's very important that you've already had your presentation, your consultation. The loan has been approved. Your buyer has given all the financials, and all those financials are, in case you don't know, 2 years of tax returns, last 2 months of bank statements, all pages, last 2 paycheck stubs, your social security card, your ID, and then of course the lender does the full credit report. So those are those financials that they typically need to have to do the whole full approval. So make sure your buyer does that, and you can tell them, you know what, I'm going to refer you to my buyer. I'm going to have you get pre-qualified. These are the items that they're going to need right away. So make sure you get all of that. And then confirm with your lender that they turned in all their financials, because you're going to want to ask for that DU approval too. Not just the approval letter, but the DU approval. Because that will help you just in case it is a requested item in the offer submission.
Oh, you said the check stub, how many?
It's 2 years of,
2 years?
I'm sorry, your last 2 years of tax returns and W-2s, your last 2 most recent months of bank statements, your last 2 paycheck stubs for both parties if there's husband and wife working, and then driver's license and social security number. Those are the items that the lender is always going to need, to do the full approval, Like I said, a lot of lenders just talk to them, run credit, and that's it, and then they'll collect their financials at another time. But if you got somebody like me that you're submitting an offer on one of my listings, I'm going to ask for a D approval. Because I start going through all the offers and like who are going to be my strongest buyers. Because my job is, as a listing agent, is to get the best qualified and best offer possible at the same time. That's my goal. Highest and best offer and the best buyer. If I can accomplish all of that, my odds of closing that transaction is pretty high. Sometimes you don't get that. Sometimes you might just get that one offer and a marginal buyer. But that's why you have your lender digging and making sure you get the green light from your lender saying, okay, even though it's not the best qualified buyer, it's still doable, so I give a green light, So that's one of the things that I always like to do for when I'm the listing agent. Yeah?
Do you feel that that last statement on the remarks that all offers may be subject to complete cross-qualification, would that help to keep away those those agents that
The fly-by-night agents and lenders?
They don't have enough information.
It does. It's letting them know up front, hey, I'm all business, I mean business, and you better be able to deliver, is basically what it is. And occasionally I will still get those marginal, oh my gosh, we're like scraping for all the last stuff. The lender doesn't even have all the financials, and he's trying to chase it from their buyers. So that does happen quite often. And that usually happens with the out-of-area agents and lenders. They don't have their stuff together. I don't know why, but that seems to happen quite often. Now, the reason why I say maybe subject to backup pre-qual is because sometimes I might receive an offer. I might have an offer from a buyer's agent that I know. And it also might be a lender that I know. And I've already closed with this agent before, and I know this lender through reputation, or maybe I know them personally, or they've already performed and I've already closed a transaction with both agent and lender. I might not have to go through the whole process of having my lender, go and collect all that stuff, because I can trust that they're going to get the job done. I might just look at the DU approval, and that's about it, and the proof of funds. I won't have them go through the whole process getting cross-qualified. So that's why I say maybe subject, because there's a lot of people that I've done business in town with that I've already worked with that I know that are going to perform to close, and I don't have to put them through that process. Yeah. Okay. All right. So do you have any ahas so far at this point in time? It's probably going to be a lot. This is going to be a lot. This is a lot of information you're going to get today.
No, just make sure that you got all the...
Yeah, you do. You want to be ahead of everything. You want to be, and you know what? It's so funny is that the listing agents can sense it right away. I just went through this myself. I just opened up an escrow last week. I represented the buyer. My buyer chose 5 houses to look at. We went to go see all of them. I went to contact every one of those listing agents. I went through the whole process of introducing myself to them, finding out if they have any offers, is there a deadline, multiple offer situation. I also go through the process of, in the MLS, you can check the property history. You can see if it fell out of escrow, if it went into escrow. I always do that for every house that if my client is actually going to write an offer. I check that because it'll tell you if it fell in and out of escrow. You want to know. You have that conversation with that listing agent. Say, hey, I noticed. Do you have any offers? Yes. Okay, that's great. And I also noticed that, and this is an example from last week's transaction that I had with my buyer that I opened escrow with. I said, I noticed that this fell out of escrow twice. I go, and I noticed that you've been on the market for over 90 days. And I see that you've also had 2 price reductions. Do you mind sharing with me why it fell out of escrow a couple of times? I'm just kind of curious about that. And the agent says, well, the first buyer didn't realize that there was a Melrose tax. And they didn't even factor that into their payment, so it put them out of the the ability to purchase. And then that was the first one. And the second one was that the buyer just changed their mind completely right after they went into escrow. They just decided that maybe it wasn't the right home for them before they even got to the whole point of getting a home inspection done. So and then when I was showing the house, the seller actually happened to be there. And my buyer, they were just like chatty. So that seller was saying too much that he shouldn't probably have, that I used for my benefit, for my buyer, when I was getting prepared to put my offer together for my client. So I learned, not only have I educated my seller, I go, okay, we're going to go and look at this house, and just letting you know that we do have an offer on the table. And I also want to inform you that this house has fallen out of escrow a couple times, which I already have been informed that one of them was a Melrose. So there is a Melrose tax on this property, which he goes, well, what's that? And I said, Melrose is you're paying a bond. It's more added to your property taxes. So typically we're at like 1%, and so you might have to spend an extra. The Melroses they range anywhere between $50 more to even up to $300-400 more on a payment a month. So the smartest thing that you can do is, if you see that on the MLS sheet that I have that you see here, there is a feature in here that says Melrose.
Yes.
And when it says no, then you don't have to worry about those extra taxes. But when it says yes, and it's a house that your client still wants to see, call your NHD girl. Call Renee, my NHD, and say, hey, Renee, I'm showing this house, and I would like to have a copy of what the Melroses are. So when I'm at the house, I can have this conversation with my client and make sure that they're comfortable paying that extra $336 a month in Melrose taxes on top of property taxes. So that is the reason why that one specific house had 2 price reductions, and it probably fell out of escrow twice because of that. Because, number one, the listing agent or the buyer's agent didn't pay very close attention to the multiple listing service and didn't pay attention to the Melrose. But if your client understands what the Melrose is, you should have that conversation before you show it. And then if they want to see it, then have the information to give it. So you can prepare yourself ahead of time by pulling the Melrose taxes from your NHD girl, and that way you say you're going to be paying taxes plus this extra per month. Are you okay with that? My buyer was okay with that. And I had a multiple offer situation. I wrote an offer. There was 3 of us that was already competing with this house. And I purposely priced it. We were 20% down. I went ahead and did a 3% deposit. I lowered my contingencies from, and you know how we have 17 days for our due diligence? I did appraisal at 12, and I did a home inspection at 12. I lowered it to make it speed the process, to show that we're a business. When we mean business, we're going to move fast. And I told the buyer's agent, the listing agent, that we may also have the opportunity to do appraisal waiver. So I wanted to stand above my competitors. We came in at the list price, but we didn't ask for any closing costs. I did a 3% deposit. I lowered my contingencies at 12 for appraisal and 12 for inspection. And then within 48 hours, the lender told me that they got an appraisal waiver. So she was able to do, and I also had I had DO approval. So I had the DO approval already, plus the approval letter. So I came in really aggressive, business, and this is what we have, and this is what we're going to do. And right away, the seller also developed rapport with my clients because they just so happened to be at the house at the same time, which is, I guess, beneficial. And I learned information by the conversation that seller was saying that he probably shouldn't have. That helped me strategically put my offer together because he talked too much. And but that's not my problem. I don't represent the seller, So I use that to my advantage when I put that offer together, and we won right away. We won. And so that's an example of like what you need to be looking for and what you need to be doing, the kind of questions and stuff like that to ask. Okay. So preparing to write an offer. So we obviously talked about number one, ensuring the property is still available. Building rapport with the listing agent. That's actually having that conversation. If you can't have a physical conversation and that agent's too busy, don't be afraid to text away your conversation. Inquire about the activity, finding out if there's any offers on the table. And, finding out why did they fall through by looking at the history of that. When you go into the history tab, property history tab, when you're in the MLS, it'll show that if it went pending. You can see when it went pending recently. It'll even have the dates. Ask questions about the seller's motivations. Like, you can ask questions like, why are they leaving? If they lived in a house for so long, I'm just curious, See if they're very emotionally attached, or if they're emotionally attached somewhere else, or they've got to go somewhere, like maybe there's a job relocation, they got to report to duty or whatever it is. Ask the listing agent how they want to receive the offer. Well, obviously most agents want to receive it by email. I mean, you might have like the odd ones that may not be tech savvy and maybe they want it physically dropped off at the office. We used to do that back in the day. That's how we always presented our offers, was deliver it to the office, listing agent at their office, or fax machines. Obtain the buyer's pre-approval from the lender. So yes, you want to make sure you have the buyer's pre-approval letter and try to get your lender to give you the DU approval as well, okay? Go the next level above. And then make sure you get a copy of your proof of funds from your clients. And when you submit that with your offer, make sure you black out the bank account number, so that way you have your bank showing that you have proof of funds for your down payment and closing costs. You have your approval letter that has the letterhead of the lender, and then you have DU approval, and then black out the social numbers on that too, because there's going to be social numbers on there on the DU approval, and then submit that with your offer. And then review the MLS and tax records. Yes, that's part of the things. Like, you want to make sure there isn't any secret taxes. Sometimes the listing agents don't even answer that question correctly. Sometimes there isn't a Melrose, and they didn't say yes on the MLS. Our MLS is not binding, so sometimes they accidentally don't put the right information, or sometimes they don't know the information and they just are too lazy to find it out and then put it on there. It's going to be up to you to do all this research before you even submit your offer, because that could make or break the deal right there. Your buyer may not be able to stretch that extra $300 a month in Melrose taxes. And then produce a comparative market analysis. Yes, I do that every time I write an offer. I run comps for my buyers before we submit an offer. That is a must do. And number 10, obtain seller disclosure statement and other needed documents. Sometimes on the listing agent might have something attached to there for documents. Sometimes it might be a copy of the solar agreement. Sometimes it's a copy of the NHD, because they might be disclosing to you high fire zone, fire and flood zone, fire, flood zone, and solar system. So all of these things need to be factored into for your buyers, because they may not necessarily be able to have a higher insurance premium. Maybe they're not ready to pay that Melrose, and maybe it has all the above: fire, flood, Melrose, and solar. All of those numbers need to be verified with your buyer and their lender if they're qualified, because it may put them over the edge, because that's just so much extra. Insurance right now, guys, is very, very important. As you are showing homes, selling homes, taking listings, I would advise you to always make sure you check to see if it's in a fire zone or in a flood zone, or sometimes it's in both. There's a lot of areas around here that are in high fire, and there's a lot of areas that are in high fire and flood. So that could make a big difference if your buyer is going to want to move forward on this transaction, because their insurance premium is going to be very high. So as I am showing buyers houses, part of my consultation is also letting them know about the insurance issues that we have in the state of California. and that some areas over here are more prone to having different zoning with fires and floods. And making sure that if it is, if you think it might be or you don't even know and you want to know, call your NHD girl again and find out if it's in a high fire zone or flood zone, because that will make a difference on if they want to even bother. I mean, why waste your time going through a transaction and then find out that the insurance is going to be super high and then they don't want that payment? So you might want to do
Yeah,
that
I see
research.
you had highlighted lease contracted propane tank, so that means that that property is not natural
Correct.
gas.
Yes, I highlighted those because not every buyer is going to be prepared and want to have to deal with a septic tank or a well or a propane tank. And so you're going to have to know, like, what is the average cost to refill an entire propane tank. Usually most families have to do it once a year. That could be $500–800 a year to do your propane tanks. So you need to share that information, because some people want to live in the outskirts or on ranch property or areas that is only on propane and on well and on septic. So not every seller knows that. They don't see that when they're looking at houses. That's going to be up to you to look for that. So when you are going through the line by line on your MLS, make sure you're looking for all these things. Solar, what are the utilities? Because that may not necessarily be something that your client is interested in, because they may not want to deal with having to clean out their septic tank, or they don't want to have to refill out their propane tank once a year. They don't want to have all of that. So those are the things that you have to look for as you are searching for property, but at the same time, reminding them, hey, I know you picked this. Are you okay with this? Before you even show the house. Yeah, that's why I highlighted that too. Yes.
In the case of a property that has septic, besides the certification of the septic that you would probably request from the seller, right? What about the buyer possibly or being told about water quality regarding the well? Is that something that you have seen or that you have asked the buyer to make sure that they do have an inspection?
Whenever I know that the house on the MLS, if I see that it's on a well, and if it's on propane, and if it's on a septic, I make sure I include the SWPI addendum to your RPA, because you're going to ask the seller to pay for the septic boundary, cleaning, certification, location, pumping services, and be certified. And then you're going to ask the seller to pay for the well test, the water potability test, because when you are an FHA, USDA, or VA buyers, all of those tests and certifications are required to close. And we want to get the seller to pay for that. You don't want your buyer to be responsible for that, because that could run $2,000 for both of those. So that could be costly. So you don't want your buyer to pay for something and then turn out they can't close and they spent $2,000 on those inspections. I always try to negotiate the seller to pay for that. Most times they do. This instance, the MLS sheet that you see here, I represent the buyer and the seller. And my seller, because the house is only 2 years old, he goes, I'm not paying for a septic cert. He goes, it's brand new. If the buyer really wants it, he'll have to pay for it. My buyer was okay with that. He goes, you know what, I'm okay with that. I came in low. He came in $20,000 low. And he was the first person that showed the house, seen the house. I was sitting in the market for over 30 days and no broker was calling me. And it's because we're on the hill, we're in Cal City, it's a custom home, it's the higher priced home, we're at $469,900. The average sales price in Cal City is below $300,000. So that's considered like, I don't know, Desert Rose or something like that. In the estates, we have 2 estates in Cal City. We've got Monte Vista Estates, we've got Rancho Estates. So those are your higher priced homes in Cal City. So those houses will always sell slower over there. They're like 5 months on the market before they actually move over there. So, because it's considered higher priced over there. But anyway, my seller said no. My buyer says, I will go ahead and pay. It was fair enough. We came in lower, so I will go ahead and pay for it. So I'm not having him pay for it until his departing residence has full contingency removal, because I don't want him to waste money on a septic system. If his buyer fails to close, then he's stuck paying that $1,000 and then he may not get that house. So you almost have to time that out. Okay. Do you have any questions so far at this time, or keep plugging along? This is a lot of information, guys. Okay, let's hear from a few of you what ahas about preparing offers. Remember to write your ahas in a participant guide. You guys have any ahas at this point in time you want to share? Or no?
All of it is aha.
Just a lot? Yeah.
Yeah, just make sure, like, you read the MLS listing, all the information, that way if, your client or, they have questions, already, like, everything about it.
Right, yeah, you want to do all of your research ahead of time. Whenever I take time when I spend time with my buyers, when we're getting ready to go look at houses, I spend a day or two, just looking through all of the stuff and reading everything, looking at the property history, having the conversations, building relationships with all of the listing agent, answering questions, so that way I'm getting so much information. So when I'm showing each house, I have my own notes that I took from my conversations from that listing agent to share with as we're walking through the home. So I make notes on my MLS sheet. I give them a copy of a flyer, and that way they can take notes as they're walking through the home. And then that way they're writing down maybe some of the notes that I'm sharing them with from the listing agent's point of view. So that way, they can circle back to it in case that's the home that they really like. So yeah, it's really important to get as much information and contact your NHD girl, if you want to find out if there's a Melrose or if there's fire zone and stuff like that. And then also, when you are working with your buyers, let them know that you might have to immediately, on a house that you really like, contact your insurance agent and try to get some pricing on it, because that's going to factor into your monthly payment. So, because if insurance premiums have gone up so high, even in town, certain houses, if it's like right next to an empty field, like AAA will say, that's high fire zone, that's considered high fire zone to them, but it's not in an NHD report. They may not say, we're not insuring it because there's an empty field across the street, we're not insuring the house, we're not doing insurance on this home. So they might have to go shopping somewhere else. Maybe their actual car insurance carrier doesn't do houses. So you have to be ready to have additional insurance agents also that you can trust and count to help give them free quotes as well. Most of the time they know other agents themselves to call for insurance. And if your client happens to be military, USAA is now issuing new insurance policies again. They had frozen them for the last 2 years. So if your client has served the military, or if maybe they didn't serve the military but their daughter did or their father did, as long as they're a family member of somebody that has served, they can get USAA membership and they can get USAA insurance, and they are pricing pretty dang good. For example, the same house that you see right now, Farmers Insurance says that's in a high fire zone. It's in the middle of the desert. I don't know, maybe it's on top of the hill by the buttes. Farmers Insurance claims it as a high fire. So they are trying to put him into California plan. Insurance premiums was like over $5,000 a year. My client's a veteran. I told her, call AAA. They may say no, most likely, because it's all around the desert. Whoever you have right now at Allstate, see if they can give you one, and then I want you to call USAA. They didn't even know of USAA, and she's a veteran. Because she served in the 80s, so she didn't even think, I guess, of going to USAA. Well, she qualified for it, and her premium that she got from USAA was $1,300 versus the $5,000 from Farmers Insurance. So when we are shopping and we're getting ready to write an offer, I immediately have I send them home with homework. I go, call your insurance agent right now and start getting some pricing on your insurance. And if you like the pricing, we need to know what that is so we can give it to the lender so that we can give you an estimate of what your monthly payment's going to be. This is all before you're even writing an offer. That's part of your homework. That's part of your due diligence. You don't want to get down the road again, just like a surprise with the Melrose, finding out that the insurance was too high and your client could not afford it, or it pushes them over their ratios and they will no longer qualify. So don't waste your time. So you got to do all your due diligence ahead of time. Okay, so what is it in today's agenda? Okay. Now we are going to be writing your offer. So refer to the participant guide, write an offer checklist at a high level. We already did that. Be sure to add in any pertinent information for the market. Remember, do not submit a love letter with your offers, and as a listing agent, do not present them to your sellers. You guys all know about that, right? No more love letters? So I think that they passed that like a couple years ago, that we cannot submit a love letter with a picture of a photo of the family and then write a story or a testament about your client and then submit it with the offer. I have agents that still do that to this day. I get love letters with their offers
And pictures.
and pictures. I do not even send it to my sellers anymore. And it is part of our listing contracts actually talk about the love letters. And I tell them, I go, listen, we're going to get offers with love letters. I'm not even going to share them with you. You know why? Because it might create bias and you might think one family and fall in love with this one and that other family that has no love letters, and that love, and you're zoned in on this one family, but you're not even given this other opportunity, this other family that you have no clue anything about. So I just make it fair and square. You're not going to ever see them. I'm just not going to show it to them. And if the agent insists that they show it, I'm going to say I'm not doing it because, I'm not required to do so by law. We're not even supposed to be submitting. The DRE doesn't even want us to have love letters. Why they still do that, I don't know. Why the agents are still providing love letters. But what you can do instead is create a cover letter with your offer. You can pull a cover letter from Canva. And if you're a member of Canva, just try. I get a lot of my stuff for Canva. I do a lot of my ads and stuff in my all of my stuff on social media. I love Canva. So you can pull together a cover letter. You can add your the logo, company logo, your photo, your phone number, contact, and a little bit about yourself. And you can also list some of the terms, highlight the terms of your offer in your cover letter. That you could do. That is what you probably should do, because you know why? That is showing the listing agent all your professionalism. Like, wow, not only did this agent follow my directions on my MLS, she's also given me a cover letter, which is very professional looking, because you're saying, here's the offer, highlighting the terms, we're attaching the approval letter, the DU approval letter. The terms, in short, is like we came in $5,000 overpriced, we're not asking for any closing cost. We would like, a 21-day escrow and something like that, to that fact. And that way, that's in front of the offer. And it shows your professionalism, a little bit different, because most agents don't do that. So you sometimes want to separate yourself from your own competition and really put your best foot forward, not only coming with the strongest offer that you possibly can, but also showing your professionalism as well. Okay. Price and terms. Okay, so writing an offer, price and terms. We kind of talked about how you get to that point. Run your comps, try to give them some options. Do your research with the listing agent. See if there's any additional seller disclosures that are attached to the listing service. It could be the NHD report. It could be the solar contract, any conveyances, earnest money deposit. On the MLS, most times the listing agents will ask you how much of a deposit they would like to have at minimum with the offer. Like for instance, I put $5,000 on this one. Sometimes you'll get a less deposit, especially if it's a USDA buyer or a VA buyer. A lot of them don't have any money that's 100% financing. So they might put $1,000 deposit, but you can always counter them for more. I try to always get at least $2,000 out of the buyers because I want a little bit more teeth in the game, because $1,000 is pretty low. So you want to look at that before you write an offer. Try to meet that if you possibly can, especially if you have a conventional buyer or a buyer that has money. Try to do that. When you're writing your offer. Due diligence inspection period, so we all know that it's 17 days, but you can shorten that timeline, maybe to 10 days for your inspections, if you want to get the ball rolling. That looks good on the contract. Financing terms, you want to make sure that you are checking the boxes on that page of the contract, the RPA, if it's an FHA, if it's a VA buyer, if it's conventional or other or cash, you want to make sure you're checking that. You make sure you have your buyer approval letter with the offer. I would even throw in that due approval if you can get your lender to do that. And then making sure that closing date works with what works for your client as well as the sellers. Like I put on here 30 to 45 days. So if the buyer wants to close at 30 days, that's great. It's telling the buyers the seller needs at least 30 days. But we could do a 45 day if that works for you too. So that's showing me, what the seller's expectations are as well. So look at that when you're writing your offer. Any special clauses? Well, if you see that somewhere around here, like maybe the buyer might put under agent remarks, buyer to assume solar loan or solar lease, and then they might disclose the payment. Sometimes they don't disclose the payment. When they do, you must ask and call and get that information from the listing agent and even try to get a copy of that lease agreement. So that way you are looking at that, having your client look at that and making sure that the lender knows how much that payment is, calculated into the payment, because sometimes if it's a loan, well guess what? It's like the buyer has to assume like a car loan, because now you got a $30,000 panel system and they just put it on there and they've only got it this year, so they have like still 24 months or 24 years to pay or whatever it is left. So that lender has to calculate that payment into their calculations and make sure it fits in their ratios. If it doesn't fit in their ratios, they're not going to qualify to buy the house. So you want to make sure that you're doing all your research on that as well when you're submitting an offer.
On your escrow time, it says close of escrow plus 5. That means that the seller wants to stay 5
The
days.
seller may want to stay because sometimes, not all the time, a listing agent is going to say the seller needs 3 to 5 extra days. Okay, sometimes they don't put that on there. Sometimes the seller will put that. Sometimes the listing agent will counter you, close of escrow possession to be COE plus 3. Now, when I see that there is a possession COE plus 3 or 3 to 5, I will include that addendum with my offer and make life easier for that listing agent. And I will put the possession, the addendum.
Say that again.
The SIP, the seller in possession form, I will include that with my offer.
Okay, so as a buyer's agent, is there any advice that you would give the buyer? Because the buyer's going to say, wait a minute. I mean, if the buyer is knowledgeable enough to know that, okay, by then the house is mine and I'm already paying for my mortgage.
Right.
So what's going to happen with those 5 days? Do you ever have anything like that?
Sometimes I give them a choice. I let them know, listen, the seller needs 3 extra days or 5 extra days, whatever it is. Because this is a multiple offer situation, wouldn't you think that we should just let them have that extra 5 days and not squabble over that extra 5 days? They might want to, I know you might want to you're already paying interest from the day that escrow closes, interest begins. Are you okay to give them that 5 days without any squabble? Or do you want to negotiate the seller to pay, the interest per day for the 5 days? Most of my buyers are not going to ask for it. Now, if it's like 7 days or longer, I'm going to negotiate.
Do you call that renting back?
Yeah. So there's a seller in possession and there's a form for that as well. It's the seller in possession. It's on the seller possession. You find out how much the interest is per day from the lender, because you're going to find out what the payment is. And then you just divide that by 30, and so you're going to calculate seller to pay. We'll give you your 7-day in possession, but you must pay, X amount of dollars per day. The seller might counter say, I get the first 3 days for free, but I'll go ahead and pay the interest for the 4. You might do that too. So they might do that because the interest might be $80 a month or whatever it is, and everybody's all crunching numbers, so you just go back and forth and everything, because I've had that happen before too. But the seller goes, I always just assume I needed a couple extra days because I can't even buy my moving truck until I get my money from escrow closes, so it's impossible for me to move out the same day that it closes because I can't even get my moving truck until I get my money. Or I can't pay my movers until I get my money. So there's a lot of that that plays in. So sometimes giving the keys on the day that closes is not necessarily going to work for the buyer or for the seller. Because we could try, but most times, half the time, the seller is still there, and they have, they can't give the keys because they need that money, and they need time to pack the house, and they need time for the movers to move and whatnot. So yes. Okay. Reviewing the contract, be sure that your buyer understands the contract. Review the details like the price, the closing date, the inspection time, your contingencies and conveyances. Know what is essential in your area. That's like we're talking about the fire zones and flood zones and whatnot. Some of you may not know that right away because you're learning your areas. Like, oh gosh, you're going to know like right away there's a certain part of Rosamond that falls in a floodplain. So you're going to know right away that all the houses that fall in that floodplain are going to have a flood zone. So you're going to need a special flood cert. So you're going to need to look into all of that. You'll learn all of that through time and through experience of showing houses in different subdivisions and developments and cities and zip codes. Know your standard or common terms for offers in your area. Avoid the rookie agent mistake. So yes, you want to definitely go very prepared with your offer. You got to do all of your homework. You don't want to just like stick your offer together and just send it off and just pray. It's not like that. You need to really have everything prepared, and like she said, have all of your ducks in a row when you're submitting those offers. Do you have any other ha-has at this time? Any questions?
I like the cover letters added to the presentation for
Yes.
offers.
Uh-huh.
I think we really need to send out. So
Yeah.
cover letters would be
I think so. I think it's almost like a gigantic business card, and then also highlighting just the terms, like the important parts of the offer. Because sometimes I receive those from certain agents, not all. I mean, I want to say maybe 3 to 5% of the realtors use cover letters. There's a lot of us that don't use them, So when I do see them, it's actually really nice. It shows their professionalism to me. It shows that they care about their job, they care about their client. That's sharing information about the agent. That is giving me the confidence that they're gonna know what they're gonna do, and we're gonna close. You know what I mean? They're going above and beyond. That's that one extra little thing that you're doing.
So you're saying you'd be more inclined to go with someone that has a cover letter?
Not necessarily, but it just shares character about that realtor to me, because it's telling me that they're going a little bit above the norm. You know what I mean? They're doing something different to separate themselves from their own competition. They might be competing with other agents that are submitting offers, and they did everything that they asked me to, but this one agent is trying to stand out. So it's catching my attention. You know what I'm saying? So they're going that extra mile.
Do you have an example of those?
You can go on Canva. If you go on canva.com and then you type in cover letters for real estate agents, it'll show you a bunch of templates that you can build and pick and choose and whatever. And they're usually just one pages, nice and simple. Gives you a little area where you can fill in, the details of the offer, like bullet point, sales price, 30 days, contingency time, whatever it is. And that way it's just like focusing on it.
Make like a template
Yeah.
of that and just.
It comes right on
send it
Canva.
Okay.
Yeah, I went ahead and I just paid for my, whatever you call it, subscription for Canva, so that way I could do all of my stuff on there. I love Canva. Canva is a great resource, for sure. Okay, now presenting the offer.
Of course, just having that cover sheet doesn't keep you from reviewing the rest of the offer, just to
No.
make sure that something is.
Oh, no. I go through all the offers. When I'm the listing agent, I make sure that they included the approval letter. 50% of the time never include proof of funds. I'm going to need it. Our office needs it. It's required in command anyway, so try to get it. And if it's not included, then if you decide that you wanted to cross-qualify the buyer, you're going to get it through the lender. So that's one of the requirements. And but yeah, try to get the proof of funds. Because especially if it's a conventional or cash buyer, I won't even present the offer unless I have cash. Show me the money. You're writing cash, but you didn't submit a bank statement saying that they have the ability to pay all cash. If I do submit it, I'm going to tell the seller we're not even going to respond to it until we actually get proof of funds, because they're not showing me proof of funds. It means nothing to me. Yeah. Okay, so presenting the offer. So you want to double check all of your documents, follow instructions, label all your documents clearly, making sure that if you've got a home that is on well and septic, that you got your SWPI. If you've got a seller that needs extra time in the home, make sure you got your SIP in there. If you got an FHA buyer or VA buyer, you want to make sure you got your FHA and your VA addendum that you're including in that offer. There's all these forms, and they usually when you click those things, it will automatically upload into your WinForms. Yeah. And then you want to notify the listing agent when you're sending an offer. So you want to call them, you want to text them, obviously you're going to send it by email. Make sure that they receive it. And in the email, I always say, please confirm receipt of this offer. And then I'm going to text them and say, hey, I just sent you and emailed you the offer. Please confirm that you received the offer. So that way I'm getting confirmed that they have received it. And then I also, in my email content, I ask them when they might be presenting the offer so that I can actually get a timeline to my buyer and say, hey, they're going to review all the offers on Tuesday evening. That's when they're going to actually be presenting all the offers. So at least we have some kind of a knowledge that we probably won't hear anything until Wednesday morning at the latest, or afternoon we might receive a counter offer or a response. And then of course remember that if they're going to reject your offer flat out, get a copy of that rejection. So that way you can prove, it's proof that the offer was presented, and you also have proof so that your clients can see that you went, to show them proof as well. Sometimes the client may not believe you necessarily. Sometimes they're thinking, oh, this is Asians, all they care about is their money, blah, 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 blah. You're going to have people like that. They're very skeptical, So it's all about trying to build that relationship and earning their trust. And then, well, we don't add any of our documents into Command until it's time to open up an escrow. And then, obviously, I consult my buyer before I even present with the offer. But anyways, you're gonna be going through all of that. Do you have any more new ahas for me at this time? Okay. So far we've talked about making offers. Now let's talk more about receiving them. As the listing agent, you have the responsibility to your client to present all offers in a timely manner and give them fiduciary advice on those offers. Okay? So when you're receiving and reviewing the offer checklist, you want to make sure it is complete, confirm receipt of the offer, get the offer to the seller in a timely manner. So your seller might, you want to have, when you're listing your houses with your sellers, you might ask them, when we receive an offer, what is your preference? Would you like me to email them to you as we receive them? Do you want me to sit down with you and go over the offers as they come? Or find out what their preference is. Sometimes their schedules are very busy, or maybe they have schedules that are not maybe they work shifts that you can't even meet them during the daytime. So you want to have that conversation first before you start receiving offers with your sellers. And then you want to create an executive summary of the offers. I always like to bullet point, the offers, the terms to my clients to make life easier. When I am presenting the offers, I also get a net sheet based on the buyer's terms. I have a net sheet that I give to them when we list the property. That's their net sheet with a full price offer. Then I prepare net sheets for each offer I receive based on the buyer's terms when I'm submitting the offer. So that way the seller can see the bottom line. Because all they care about is their bottom line. What is my bottom line? This is the terms, but this is your bottom line. So they can actually see the spread between all of the buyer's terms, and they're going to kind of know. So tell me about this buyer. I really like this one. Tell me about this buyer. Okay, this is an FHA buyer. They are asking for, a little bit of concessions. Finding out that I have a copy of their DO approval. They actually have really good FICO scores. Their FICO is 720. I know the lender personally. We can go ahead and do a cross-qualification if you want to, but I personally know the agent and the lender. I don't think that's really necessary. Or we can go through the process in case you want to. Sometimes I do that even if I know the lender and the agent when I have them buying another house, if there's a contingency sale involved. Because if we fail to perform on their buyer closing on their house, they're not going to be able to close on their house that they're buying. And we don't know if that seller is buying another house too. It could keep going, multiple dominoes. So you're the first to close, I'm going to cross-qual. Even if I know the agent, I say, I still want to have my lender take a peek at everything, making sure that you're absolutely bulletproof because we've got 4 other contingencies or 4 other families behind me, and you're the first to go. So if you don't close, we all don't close. So I will cross-qualify and I will double-check and verify before I actually go into contract. So you want to do that and make sure, so. Okay. Create an offer and command. I don't use command when I create offers. Do any of you guys do that? Do you use the cloud and command, creating an offer and command? I personally don't use that feature. I'm old school. I just use my win forms and I don't use it, but you can. I couldn't even tell you how to do that because I don't do that feature. Just letting you know that might be something that Mondo could show you or something. So that's not something that I personally do when I am creating an offer.
Maybe it's easier in command.
I just do my win forms. It's just, I find that it's too many redundant things. I don't have time to do all of this and then do this. I just stick to my win forms and I just do my offers. But I know that they want you to participate in using command as much as possible with all their features. That's one that I don't do. That's just me though. Maybe you like to do it. That's entirely up to you guys. But I'm just telling you.
Maybe for the new agents.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Now that we talked about the offer itself, let's fit into our command structure. Well, I'm not going to tell you that. Let's skip to that. We're going to go into the receive, review, and respond to the offer. So buyer makes the offer. Seller responds in one of the three ways. You might have a cap on the expiration date, or you might just use the full 3 days that are on the purchase agreement. The seller might respond in a counter offer. They might respond with accepting your offer. You might want to reject the offer. It's kind of like the same thing as the buyer side. You know, if they decide to reject the offer, make sure that they sign that rejection page, especially when you have a multiple offer situation, because you will get certain agents that want that proof. And they say, can I have the proof? Absolutely, I have that for you. I was going to send it to you. You beat me to it, you know. So I always send the rejections to every buyer's agent if my seller just flat out rejects it. Sometimes I don't sign the rejection yet because you might have a seller that was going to pick one of the three and you're trying to negotiate a counteroffer with that one buyer. I necessarily don't tell these other two agents about what's going on yet because I might have to go back to one of the other two to work with if the one isn't going to work out. Sometimes the seller will choose just one buyer to work with. Sometimes we'll work with all three. You know, it depends on the situation. Some of them might be completely off from each other. Like if there's like a really strong buyer, we might just work with just that one strong buyer and develop a counter offer. If they're all tight and close, the nets are all the same, maybe they all look like they're very strong offers, then I will create a counter offer that might be something like this. Buyer to cross-qualify, buyer to submit highest and best offer. So I might do those two things. Cross-qualify and submit highest and best offer, and their deadline is 3 days. So then I can see now which is the strongest buyer through the cross-qualification and who's going to submit their highest and best offer. You know what I mean? So you might be able to get a buyer to give a little more net to the seller. So I go through that whole process.
Would you find, have you ever found when you ask in a situation like that with multiple offers, that you say, you know, a good buyer, but buyer to be cross-qualified. Have you had anyone dropping off because you asked for cross-qualification?
Once in a blue moon. Most buyer's agents, they sigh, but they'll do it because their buyer really wants the house. If the buyer really wants the house, they're going to go through that process.
Okay with
Yeah, and I personally don't like to get involved. I let the lenders get involved. I let my lender, I use Dean Henderson, I let him call, actually he doesn't call them, the lender calls Dean, and then he emails everything that he needs. In my counter offer, what I do is I'll submit a counter offer email. I'll say cross-qualification seller counter offer, and I put the buyer's name on it as a subject, and I CC Dean, and I CC the buyer's lender and the buyer's agent, and I provide them the counter offer, and I provide them all the list of items that Dean needs in my email content. So I do a little bit of the footwork for Dean to make it easier, so that he's not having to say, I need this, and I already tell him this is what we need. 2 years of bank statements, 2 years of tax returns, W-2s, 2 months bank statements, 2 paycheck stubs. I don't ask for social and driver's license. I just want my lender to see the financials. And then when they start emailing it over, right away, we'll have lenders, they'll say, absolutely, I've got that all, I'll send it right over. I'll work on that, I'll get that to you. Sometimes I'll work on that, I'll get to you, it takes 2 days. Because you want to know why? That lender doesn't have it. That lender never collected it from the buyer in the first place before they issued that approval letter. So now this is giving you the opportunity to see who is going to be really the best buyer. Now, not all agents do the cross-qualifying. Sometimes they just do a phone call. Sometimes they just look a phone call and look at a DU approval. And some agents don't even call at all, and they just trust that they're going to close. I learned a long time ago not to do that, because you will find that you will lose transactions because they actually were never really approved buyers. They were lenders that just did the phone call, and did maybe a soft pull or whatever, or they didn't look at all the financials, or maybe their bank statement only, that type of thing, so they're not really doing anything. So I like to really go in a little bit deeper with each one of my offers I have, and I educate my buyers when I'm working with the buyers and let them know, I need you to make sure that you get all of this done now. This is all done with the lender because we might be requested to do this, and here's why. I do it as a listing agent. We might have that same thing with the listing agent on the other end. So that way you're preparing them with the market, as the market moves fast. If they're not ready, you're going to miss those opportunities. If there's a deadline of 24 hours to submit your highest and best offer and your buyers don't even have all that stuff in, they're never going to stand a chance. Because that listing agent is going to pick somebody that's already showing them all of the ready, willing, and ableness, that has done all the research. Because you might get a buyer that's trying to slide in, but isn't necessarily ready and doesn't have all that stuff done. And why are you going to put your sellers in a position to wait on that one buyer? It's not fair to the other buyers that already was given a deadline and already did their homework, and already did all their stuff. That's not fair. So, you have to still present the offer, but you can say, they're probably never going to make this deadline, but I still have to present this offer to you. We're going to give them the chance to do it, but we may not have that information before your decision that you want to make on these other ones, because we have to make a decision. We've already been sitting on this for too long, and blah, 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 blah. We got to make a decision. Okay? Okay, so we talked about counter offers, accept offers, rejecting offers, negotiations, beginning the contract to close. Buyer agent contacts listing agent to learn more. Don't assume what no means no. All right, training gets better with feedback. Give us yours. I don't know what that means. KW Cares mission about and grants. Guess they decided to throw a bunch of these in here.
I think it's just like,
KW text mission statements, who we serve, respond to the offer role play. Okay. I guess that's it?
yep.
Wow. I actually did that in less than 3 hours this time. You guys have any questions for me at this time? Anything that you'd like to ask me if you're a new agent? Hit me with all your questions. I've been here for a while, so I'm like a fossil. So. Hit me with your questions if you want. Anything, because I was new one time and I had so many questions I was afraid to ask. Like if it was a stupid question, there's no such thing as a stupid question, so ask away. It's your chance.
You know what I want to know? There's so many little details that I'm afraid I won't know what to look for. So what are your main things that you always look for that that slip through the cracks?
So don't be afraid when you are writing your first offer, your listing presentation, or putting together your presentations, or putting together, presentation of an offer, or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to go to your team leader first, or your mentors if you have any mentors. There's mentorship programs here too. You can also sign up for that. And ask for advice to make sure that they're looking over everything. I've got Shakita over here. She's actually I'm her mentor. So don't be afraid to ask your mentor or your leadership, to go over everything before you actually present, before you actually go out and show houses, before you actually, sit down and have your buyer consultation and sign that buyer broker agreement. That's what they're there for, to help you. Make sure you're not missing anything and you're checking all the check boxes, so that way you have that level of confidence when you're sitting down with your client when it's time. Yeah. I would definitely, coaching, the classes that you guys are doing, getting mentoring if you want, I think it's the best thing ever. You guys are very lucky to be in a brokerage that offers all of the support because I came from a brokerage that didn't have this kind of support. We didn't have classes like this. We didn't have training. We didn't have coaching. We didn't have mentoring. You know, it was, they claimed they did, but it was not anything like this at all whatsoever. This is at a whole different level. I wish I had this when I was new. I learned the hard way by trial and error, and I really didn't have any guidance. I just had to learn by trial and error, and that was hard. And especially when technology was just starting to come in. I mean, we were using fax machines, and we had dial-up internet, and we had we had pagers. We didn't have cell phones. We had pagers and payphones, so it was like a whole different world when I started. So, but yeah, don't be afraid to ask for support. I mean, always have everything looked at before you actually send it off. That would be my advice, because you might miss something that you don't see because you don't know the difference. You don't know any better. You're still learning. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions?
What was the hardest thing for you to overcome when you first started out? For me, it's like cold calling. Like, what was it for you, and how did you overcome it?
My first couple of years were scary. It was very nerve-wracking because, I mean, I was a people person because I was in the service industry, but my main thing was the contract. That scared me because we really didn't have any training. I mean, my contract was only 6 pages long back in the day versus what we have now. So, and it was all, you know, it was very intimidating, you know, because I'm like, I really don't know this. I really don't know the language, and I feel like I'm not, you know, good enough for this. And I tried to learn as much as I could. I read the contract a lot. I would, you know, like try to go to some of the classes that was offered about it. What I personally did was I did everything to find out what I liked the best. I did not like cold calling. I don't like picking up the phone. Number one, I sound like Minnie Mouse. Nobody thinks I'm old enough to sell real estate. Still to this day, and I'm in my 50s. And then secondly, I found out that I'm a person-to-person. I liked, at the time, I had mall time. When we worked at the mall, we had a kiosk. I liked mall time. I liked open houses. I liked the person-to-person contact. I didn't mind door knocking either because, you know, that was okay too. That was being out with a person, I mean, person-to-person contact. I enjoyed most. I picked what I liked the most, and the most that I did was open houses and then the mall time that we had the kiosk because that was like an open house to me. So I did that, and I basically excelled in those departments, you know, in those things. That's what I did. I do what worked for me. That's where I spent all of my time in, and it ended up, you know, being very fruitful for me. That would be my advice, is to stick to what you like the most, what you're comfortable. Because if you're doing something that you're not comfortable, it's not going to work. You know? I mean, there's different ways that you could do little mini events, little mini seminars, and sometimes that might not be something that you're going to be ready right away because you have to have a level of confidence and know what you're talking about, and have partnerships with your certain vendors that will help you. Also, especially your lender. Your lender is going to be your most important partnership in this business. Building relationships, and have more than one lender, and have a Spanish-speaking lender. Build a relationship with a Spanish-speaking lender, because I don't speak Spanish, so that will be important because you don't want to ever have that language barrier in a transaction for sure. Yeah. Any other questions?
What were some questions that you had when you were beginning,
My frustrations?
other than the contracts?
Like when am I ever going to get my next deal? Like when's the next one going to come along? I was always like wondering like how long is it going to take before I start to see, you know, like the things, you know, start to fall in place. I mean, I always stressed myself out about the unknowns, I guess, because I'm very focused, driven about goals. And I always had the mindset of, like, as I told you, I had the mindset of I wanted to own my own business, I want to be in charge of my own destiny, make my own money, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to have a boss to, you know, whatever, report to and everything. I knew right away, and I'm a money person, I'm a numbers person, so I was worried that my frustrations is that, like, if the money isn't going to come along and flow at a regular basis. That was my biggest stress, like, because I left my jobs, my tips and my wages, I left that all to dive into commission-based only, and took a chance on myself. So I put that pressure on myself, and sometimes it actually works. If you just go all in and you just do it because you're forced to do it. And then, but that was probably one of my biggest frustrations is like worrying so much about like when is going to be my next buyer going to come along, or when is my next seller going to come along. So I made sure that I was always present, doing things, doing whatever you could with your office, doing things, being out there, putting yourself out there and having conversations, just getting comfortable having the conversations was like a frustration. And then eventually when you have enough conversations and you talk about it, it's almost like scripting it when you're in groups of people and doing different things. Once you do it over and over again, it's like now you could do it anytime, anywhere, and have that conversation. And people can sense your confidence and your knowledge right away. Yeah. So I would say get involved, do things, go places, don't be afraid to talk about real estate, and never be a secret agent. Wear your badge or carry your business cards with you, and always try to find an opportunity in a conversation, because you never know who you're going to meet. You just never know. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions?
Are you still mentoring?
I am mentoring. I'm one of the mentors here in the office. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's 5 of us, and I am still mentoring now. I haven't been assigned anybody new. But yeah.
Do you have a charity that you work with, or a community organization that you like to get involved with to get, your roots down and get, well, you've been here a long time, so
Yes.
you probably know a lot of people.
Yes.
I just moved here, so I'm kind of looking for some organization that I can maybe help and start to grow my network. So
Right.
what do you have?
I actually do. I'm affiliated with Homes for Heroes. I'm the affiliate realtor. This is my entire territory out here. So what that is I help buyers and sellers buy and sell, invest in real estate that are workforce heroes, like your law enforcement, your firefighters, your medical professionals, your teachers, your military, active, retired, and reserve. So I'm affiliated with that, and I started that 13 years ago. That actually helped build my business and grow it to the next level. That was 13 years ago. I've been doing this for 26 years. So my first, basically 13 years, I just basically was, trying to do things, go places, always talking about real estate and whatever, but I don't know why it took so long. Maybe because I wasn't working here yet. Switching over here to this company has definitely opened up more opportunities and opened my eyes to be involved and get involved and do things. So I definitely recommend you finding something that you can, relate to. Yeah, exactly. Because that will help you build relationships and get to know people, meet people, and that will help build your database. And once you get them educated to know who you are and that you're a realtor, that just makes life a lot easier for you to get those leads that will just fall in your lap. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions? Too quiet. Well, I guess that's it then.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, I loved it.
I just want to say thank you so much.
Oh, you're
My name's
welcome.
Steven.
Nice to meet
Yeah.
you.
I love how prepared you are. You brought your stuff. It seems like you're always prepared for your transactions.